Welcome to the Well-Rounded Grappler. I am your host, Coach Stanley. These episodes are dedicated to all my wrestlers, past, present, and future, as well as anyone that has helped me along the way. My hope is to give inspiration or motivation to anyone on their own grappling journey. On the Well-Rounded Grappler, we will be talking with various individuals from the grappling world, from coaches to competitors in wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu, and sambo. I hope you enjoy. Thank you for listening. Hey everyone, welcome to the Well-Rounded Grappler. This is Coach Stanley. I am beyond excited to share this interview I had with Brent Metcalf. Brent was a 4-time undefeated high school state champion and a 2-time national champion for the University of Iowa. Everyone knows that I'm a huge Hawkeye fan, so this was an absolute honor. I hope you enjoy this interview I had with the one and only Brent Metcalf. Okay, here we go. Thank you everyone for tuning in to the Well-Rounded Grappler. I'm Coach Stanley. My guest today needs no introduction to myself because Brent Metcalf is my favorite wrestler of all time. Big influence for me both on the mat as a competitor and a coach. Brent, would you please go ahead and introduce yourself and let everyone know kind of what you've done in the sport of wrestling?
My name is Brent Metcalf, and I'm from Davison, Michigan. Started off wrestling there when I was 8 years old and did a whole mess of wrestling as I was a young kid. And back in those times, it was the MMWA. I'm not sure if that even exists anymore. Maybe I know that it's kind of changed, the more popular, what do you want to call it, clubs or the avenues for young kids is a little bit different now. But came up through that and had some pretty good success and transitioned that into high school, and I won 4 state titles at Davison. I'm going to shorten it all, but I was recruited to go to Virginia Tech. So I went to Virginia Tech right out of high school. The head coach there took the head job at the University of Iowa, so I followed him over there, and I wrestled at Iowa, where I was a 3-time All-American, and I won 2 national titles.
Awesome. Right now you're at Iowa State.
Yeah, to keep it going. There we go. Yep. So I after college, I competed. I made a number of different world teams. Was not able to be a world Olympic champion like I always had hoped to be, but I still did a lot of really great things there. And, once my time was up there at Iowa, I did a number of different things, but where I've landed is I'm at Iowa State now, which is just down the road. I'm on my, going into, I think, our 7th season now. So, yeah, it's gone fast. 6 going on 7th season, started in 2017. So, yeah, I'm the assistant coach here at Iowa State.
So you started wrestling at age 8. Do you remember how that first year of wrestling went? I know from listening to a whole bunch of different podcasts you've done and reading a lot of information on you played a ton of sports growing up. BMX, swimming and diving, football, baseball, I think. Just a lot of stuff. So do you remember what that first year of wrestling was like for you?
Well, the bit that I remember is it was kind of random. I didn't have any wrestling in my family or anything like that. I actually found a flyer on the ground, and I picked it up. And ironically, when young kids, and I have a bunch of them now, they had a really cool logo. And that's what inspired me to start wrestling was it was actually at Goodrich, which was 10 minutes down the road from Davison is where we started. They had a really cool mascot, and I was like, man, that looks really cool. I don't know anything about it, but I want to try it. So I tried it, and my older brother, was doing basketball at the time, and within 2 weeks, he quit the basketball team, and then he joined wrestling. I mean, obviously, I loved it really early on. I was pretty good early on. I think that first year I was like 3rd in the state. Earlier, how I remember is that I loved it. I loved kind of the fight with rules, as I kind of call it. I was probably a crazy young kid, so it was a perfect activity for me to be involved in. So, yeah, that's how I remember that first year going.
What was that mascot?
it was a Martian. So think of like Marvin the Martian, but on steroids. So it was a Martian with like all these muscles, and it had a singlet on, and it said Goodrich Wrestling, and I just said that was our mascot, and that, I don't know, something about, I've told the story a number of times, but that literally is why I started wrestling, was because that mascot looked cool. Didn't know anything about it. Ironically, as we get deeper into this, we could talk more about it, but ironically, I walked into a club that had, turned out to be 2 or 3 NCAA champions came out of there, So that was probably, it was ironic, but not ironic too. I think a lot of times, you're placed in situations and everyone kind of rises together, So Paulie Donahoe was he was a national champion at the University of Nebraska. He was kind of the young stud there. And, right away, I kind of, I'll say followed him because he was just a year older than I was, and he was kind of the man at the time. But I kind of jumped on his coattails and started doing what he was doing, and we kind of both started kicking butt together, So.
Absolutely. And John Reeder was another one of your partners?
Yeah, John Reeder. So John was actually same thing, like 10 minutes away, but it was one of them deals where we all kind of worked out together. And then obviously when we went to Davison, John ended up going to Davison. That story, again, a lot of these are really long stories, but essentially how that all panned out was, as youth, we were doing our youth thing, and then we're getting ready to go into high school. Roy Hall, who was the head coach at Davison, back then, he had just got out of college, right? So he was helping out at Goodrich's youth club, and there was a transitional period happening. The head coach, so Goodrich was a really great program, but the head coach was getting ready to retire, and I guess kind of how it happened is Roy got the head job at Davison the year before that coach retired. So I'm going to guess how history would have gone is had that coach retired a year earlier, Roy would have taken that job, and we would have all been Goodrich kids rather than Davison kids.
Sure.
Because, when he went there, and honestly, we probably would have stayed because that was Dennis Storrs is his name. He was a legendary coach. Did a lot of great things there. We would have had no reason to leave Goodrich either, but he was gone, so the program didn't really have anything. So it was kind of natural for us to all just follow Roy over to Davison,
Yeah, I hear his name in just about every interview that you have, Roy Hall. So must have been a huge influence on you. You mentioned his name a lot.
Yeah, huge influence. I mean, looking back and being an adult now, just and understanding kind of everything and how it was working. He was a young, essentially college kid, just got out of college, and then he got his hands on some young stud kids, and essentially we just became part of his family. So he had a young family at the time, little children. So it went both ways, like we were a big part of his family, but then him and his wife and his kids became a part of our family. We did a lot of things together outside of the sport of wrestling, right? And a lot of time together. And that's really probably the key to us buying into every word the guy said, right? And then, I also, he was selling us some good goods because his philosophy and just about everything that I stand for is rooted in what I learned through him, so that's why you hear his name a lot, because that was the first, 10 years of my upbringing in the sport of wrestling was Roy Hall. So
8-year-old Brent Metcalf, put on the headgear, put on the singlet, lace up your boots or your shoes for the first time. How'd the first match go ever?
Oh man, I don't know if I can remember that, and I'm just gonna guess. I think when you first start, you go to the beginners tournaments, right?
Yeah.
And I remember, again, as I remember it, you were allowed to wrestle in the beginners tournament, but then once you won a beginners tournament, you graduated out, and then you couldn't go to them anymore, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I won my first beginners tournament, so I think I only had one shot at the beginners, and so it went well. Whether I had a natural feel for it. Roger Bailey, who was the youth coach at the time, he had, looking back again, a really, really solid program that he put us through. And, I can remember all the different drills and stuff that we did. And, as I reflect back, I was like, well, that would be the stuff that I would want my young kids doing. Those are the basics, just the basics of the sport of wrestling and we just repped it over and over and over. We got really good at, just simple stuff, single leg, high crotch, double leg, and then he did like a sit-out series, which, especially for little kids, is really effective because it's, again, for little kids, sometimes when you don't have that body strength, actually standing up to your feet gets really hard. So, learning that short sit series, it was good. And Goodrich at the time, we were winning every single, we'll just call it club championship, like that school or that club, we were winning them all, So what he was doing was working. And again, probably really fortunate. I'm sure that it was natural to me, but also really fortunate that's where I happened to live, where we had such a great club. And then also, ironically, a bunch of great athletes that came out of there too.
It sounds like you were raised playing a whole bunch of sports, and your dad was in the trades, an electrician. You hear about farm strength, or you hear about kids that just develop early, that kind of hit puberty early or develop early, or is athletic at an early age. How would you describe yourself going in there? I know you didn't work on a farm, but if your dad worked in the trades, I know you probably helped him out with a lot of stuff and carried some lumber for him and swung the hammer with him and all that kind of stuff, I'm sure.
I would say that we were definitely raised to be hard-working kids. And I don't mean we weren't farm kids, so not in that manner. But just in the everyday manner, raised like, hey, if you want something done, you go do it yourself. If you start something, you finish it. That was kind of how we were raised. So there was a lot of benefits to that. But, honestly, I was probably a pretty athletic little kid. Again, I can't remember this because I was involved with so many different sports and I loved them, and I was pretty good at a lot of them too,
Sure.
And a lot of that stuff translates. I'm a big fan of even my kids. I put them in about everything, whether it was gymnastics or football, because they all kind of help each other. And then especially at that age, you're just learning your body and how to move and how to do this and that. So certainly how I was raised, and I don't know if mentality or discipline is the right way to describe it. And also, I was a middle kid, so it was one of them deals where I had a big brother picking on me, and then I had a little sister who she also got to pick on me because if I laid hands on her, big brother used to pummel me too. So I certainly think that there's a benefit to being the middle child, even though at the time it sucks.
I've seen videos of you, I think it was in your Flow documentary, where you're teaching your son to shoot the bow. That's kind of neat. Yeah. So did you grow up hunting and fishing, or was that later?
Ironically, I grew up, a lot of my young childhood, we grew up on 15 acres. We moved a bunch. My mom was a realtor. So it seemed like we were buying houses every couple years, and hopping around. But a lot of my childhood that I remember, we grew up on 15 acres. And my dad was an electrician, so we didn't have a whole lot of time for hunting, but he introduced us to, archery. Let's just say that, right? Mm-hmm. So from a really, really young age, out on those 15 acres, they actually butted up to a bunch of public land. I had a bow and an arrow, and I'd target practice. I would shoot, and I would set the target up between trees, and then I'd, run over however many yards, and I'd shoot it, and I'd try to hit the target, So I had a passion ever since I was a really young kid just for archery, even though I didn't have a whole lot of hunting, not anyone guiding me as far as hunting goes,
Sure.
As I got older, I had some buddies, high school, that kind of exposed me to it a little bit, but it wasn't really until I got to Iowa, and ironically, I met a guy, and I kind of fibbed to him because he asked me, he goes, hey, Metcalf, you're a big hunter, aren't you? And I was like, oh, yeah, man, big hunter, and I was fibbing, And he goes, well, I've got some land I bought, and I'm not using it. Do you want to go hunt on it, And I was like, yeah, for sure. I had never done anything in my life, on my own hunting, right? Mm-hmm. So I kind of cut my teeth on this guy's land. It was about 100 acres or so. And he said, hey, good luck. So I went and bought tree stands, and I figured it out. It took me about, I think my second year is when I finally shot a deer.
Cool.
So yeah, that's kind of where my hunting passion arose. But I'd always been big into archery most of my life, actually, it feels like, so.
Have you ever heard of or follow Cam Hanes?
I know who Cam Hanes is, yeah.
I listened to one of his audiobooks a couple months ago. It was pretty cool because I'm all about listening to stuff about mindset, and then he talks about all these crazy hunting stories and hunting in the mountains after elk and things like that.
Yeah.
But then he's a marathon runner, and I mean he's an intense dude.
Yeah, I've never run 100-mile marathons, but I have DIY backpack into the mountains a lot of years chasing elk, and it's one of the toughest things.
Sure.
It's one of the toughest things because you're carrying your life on your back, and if you want to get into the elk, you got to go 3, 4, 5 miles in, and by in I mean up. And yeah, it's grueling, it's hard, and public land hunting, especially, and by that I mean like over-the-counter stuff. Them elk, it's hard. Everyone else is after them. I've been fortunate to hunt some spots where it takes 8 to 10 years to draw, and the population's better and the hunting's a little bit easier, just honestly. But I went 4 years in a row to Colorado, and of the 4 years, I got one elk. I can relate, and I've listened to not a lot of him, but a little bit of him, and yeah, he speaks right up my alley as far as the joy for me when it comes to the hunting is the process. I guess probably just like wrestling, right? It's the work that I put in. I hiked in there with a backpack, and I found this animal, and I was able to outsmart them in their world.
Sure.
And then the whole process of cutting the game up and bringing them home and eating them. So that, to me, is the joy. It's not necessarily that I got the animal even, right? So same with deer hunting it's the process of, everything that goes throughout the year, whether you're scouting the land and all the different things that you do. That is what I love. So, I tell people a lot of times I don't shoot very many deer these days just because I get picky. And honestly, if I let a deer walk by, in my head, I'm like, hey, I won. As my old age, I'm getting less and less about having to tell my buddies that I shot a deer this year, and more just, internally knowing like, hey, I outsmarted those 3, but the one I'm really after, I didn't get him this year. That's kind of how I operate when it comes to that. But
that's cool. I figured go off on a cool tangent there. I like stuff like that. So you are one that sets the bar high for yourself. You want to achieve the top title, the top trophy, the top achievement for everything you do. So as you're in junior high, coming up to the high school level, was 4 state titles? Was that the goal? Was that what you were thinking of? Or were you already thinking past that, like, this is just a stepping stone for my Olympic career?
No, I think at that age, you're definitely, again, you got to remember, like, we didn't have the opportunity, let's call it that these kids do these days. And by that, I mean, we didn't have the cadet and world championships as even an option, Okay. I can't think of how many of those teams I would have made because, I won the corresponding event, right? But they didn't exist. USA Wrestling, they didn't, the world team option didn't come available until my junior going into senior year of high school. When I was around about that age, it was solely focused on, and again, you've got dreams of doing that because you're watching it on television, right? Or at that time, I'm old enough that I had VHSs of the Olympic Games, right?
Yep, me too.
You're dreaming of things like that, but it doesn't seem like reality, So yeah, certainly one thing that I think that helped me, at least looking back, was my focus was always I wanted to be a 4-time NCAA champion. But the focus, at least what was taught to me and what was communicated by coaches, was never to be undefeated. So I ended up being undefeated all through high school, 228-0. And I think it helped a lot that wasn't the focus. In fact, the opposite was true. A lot of times it seemed like between, my parents and myself and my coaches, it was like, hey, let's go try to lose. Not try to lose, but compete against the best and see where we're really at. Yeah, we're not trying to hold we're not here. I don't know, always talk to me like, we're not here to go undefeated. We're here to win 4 state titles, right? We want to win at the end of the day. The goal isn't to never lose, So, I don't know, that's kind of what I remember during those years is, yeah, I wanted to be a 4-time state champion. Yes, I wanted to tech fall and pin everyone that I wrestled. But there was also that element of like, I'm going to go and get in front of as many great wrestlers that I can, to the point that we chased them around. Especially that middle school, early high school, you're chasing them around. I used to go to Jeff Jordan camps just to chase the best kids in the state of Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't to go to Jeff Jordan camps. I didn't want to go to camp, but the best dudes are the guys that, that were either ranked ahead of me or that I was seeing winning the stuff that I wasn't winning. They were there. So I signed up to Jeff Jordan camps.
Dustin Slater wasn't there by chance, was he?
Yeah, oh yeah. That's who we were chasing.
Yeah. I do my homework, and like I said, I'm a huge fan of you. Let's talk a little bit about Davison. I'm from Illinois. I live in North Carolina now. Me and my wife moved out of here a year and a half ago. I coached in Illinois for 12 years. Central Illinois, so the Peoria area. So it's if you just head down Route 80 out of Iowa, you hit that and you go south about an hour, and that's where Peoria is.
I bought a car out of Peoria once, I think.
Did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah, my wife's Jeep, yep.
So tell us a little bit about Davison High School as far as the wrestling history there, some of the accomplishments, because I didn't know anything about Davison until I started learning about your past. So what's the history there with wrestling? What's some of their accomplishments? Not just with you, but just their history.
Yeah. I'm going to do my best I can, and I'm going to try to go back as far as I can. But Davison, I'll call it back in the day. So back when Roy Hall was at Davison, so that's where he went to high school and wrestled at. They were what I would call probably a pretty good powerhouse of wrestling, right? And I'm not going to get the year right probably, so I'm not even going to try to guess. But I wrestled during the 2000s, 2000 to 2005. So I would say it'd be at least 10 years before that. And then there was a big lull. Honestly, I don't know what happened. Since he went off, he wrestled at Michigan State. But then once Roy came back to Davison, my brother's first year, they were runner-up in the state tournament. And then next year, I was a freshman. We won like 4 straight while I was there. I think they won an additional 1 or 2, so they went like on a 5 or 6 year straight. And then that would be in 06, and then all the way up until they've probably been runner-up every year since, minus maybe 3 or 4 times they won the state title. So they're always in the top 2. So as far as I know, at least from the bit that I'm following, Davison has been, from the 2000s on, they've been just a powerhouse of a program, Sure. And that's Roy, and I can't give you exactly what year Roy stepped away. I want to say it was 4 or 5 years ago, so it's kind of trickled since then. But so it's, again, I give a lot of credit to Roy. I mean, it's not ironic that Roy Hall shows up and they start winning state titles after state titles,
Was he a teacher at the school?
He did a number of different things, but while the majority of the time that I was there, he was actually a middle school gym teacher. Okay. Yeah, so
he was a teacher in the district.
I think it worked out great for his plan because he would have all these kids come through the middle school.
Yep.
And he'd be cherry picking them, right? Like, hey, you're going out for wrestling, man. You go out. So, you're kind of filling your feeder program with these middle school kids, right? Yeah, I remember when I was in middle school with Roy, he'd send everyone out for basketball. And he'd be like, all right, you come in my office. We're watching wrestling, dude.
Really? That's pretty neat. I'm a teacher as well. I teach where I coach. So it definitely helps being a teacher inside the district. Coming in as a freshman, how are you doing against, like the seniors? Day 1, week 1, are you already the best in the room? Or are you getting your lumps for a little while from the 17, 18-year-olds?
By the time I was a freshman, I was doing pretty darn good. So Roy being at the middle school, and again, whether this was legal or not at the time, it's what we did. Roy being at the middle school, after school every day, I'd jump in his car and I'd go over to high school practice. Okay. So for 7th, 8th grade, I was in the room, and those lumps definitely happened then. But I did all right. I remember thinking to myself, because, you've got Minnesota, you've got some other states that, middle school kids are allowed to wrestle in the state tournament, Sure. So I remember thinking to myself at the time, knowing that you can't do that in Michigan, but gauging myself and thinking like, I'd be placed, I don't know, 7th, 8th grade, like, I think I could win, but I'm not sure, like, that dude's got a lot of muscles, Sure. But certainly by the time I got to be a freshman, I was holding my own. My freshman year was my brother's senior year, so certainly you had it was one of the dynamics where him and all his buddies are picking on you sort of thing. But
Sure.
But no, I was ready to go. And you talked about maturity. I'm going to guess I probably hit puberty early. I mean, I remember like 8th grade, I was wrestling like 100. And then my freshman year, I wrestled 130, and then I went 140, and then I went 45 and 45. Mm-hmm. And then I've wrestled that same weight class the rest of my life. So I'm going to guess that I kind of hit my peak right there that freshman year, as far as most of my growth.
I know how intense you are, and I know how intense of a competitor you are. Let's take a look back to Brent Metcalf, the stud. You're an upperclassman, a leader on the team, a couple state titles. You got a first-year JV wrestler, in practice that just wants to learn, and they want to wrestle you. How does that go?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because the reality of our room at that time was that it was a bunch of killers.
Okay.
And we were all trying to take each other's throat out. If you step your foot in front of me, you're trying to take me out. So I'm going to take you out, So, yeah, I would definitely say the first-year kids, I know where you're getting at with it, is you probably keep them over to the side.
Yeah.
Unless it was after practice. You would kind of have to make sure you communicated. Man, that room at that time, it was hard. It was a hard room, and it was a physical room. We took a bunch of just local kids. This isn't a private school. It's a public school, there weren't all-stars coming in, so they took these kids, essentially off the street and taught them how to fight and how to wrestle and how to battle for every position and every point. And we got a lot out of them, a lot out of them. Okay. So there's a lot of guys that were really great that did go on to do anything in college or wrestle in college. But, there's some of those names that I remember being some of the toughest guys in our room.
Were you as an individual feared in your conference by other wrestlers?
Yeah, that certainly existed. It's hard to speak. It's easier. It's hard as an athlete at the time because you're so narrowed in. You're not paying attention to what's going on. You're not paying attention, so a coach outside looking in. But I would say probably because I had a lot of forfeits and stuff like that. Or, I'd have kids weigh in and then, their coach would be like, hey, I didn't want you to hurt him, so we're not wrestling him.
I don't believe in that, by the way.
Yeah, I'm like, the safest person your kid can wrestle is me because I know what I'm doing. I'm going to take him down and pin him.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
I know how to safely take the kid down and roll him over and pin him and be done with it. You can tell when a kid doesn't belong there,
Sure.
And you don't pick on a kid. So, yeah, that always kind of stuck because, again, as wrestlers on the team, we're always competing, who can have the most pins or who can have the most tech falls or whatever. So from my point of view, I'm like, man, that's one less pin I could have had. Because forfeits don't count for pins.
Nope. So I know you were a 6-time Fargo champion, is that correct?
Yeah, in juniors, yeah.
When did you get involved in the freestyle and Greco aspect? When you first got into the club, was it folk style or was it freestyle right off the bat?
No, it was folk style, and I think I remember, I want to say about my 3rd year or so of wrestling. I remember a conversation where one of the coaches was like, hey, this kid needs to lead the state. He's ready for more. And I remember, I want to just say Kansas. I could be wrong. I went to my first national tournament. I went 0-2. I got my butt kicked, But it was great because I was like, all right, Dad, when's the next one? Let's sign me up again. Let's go to the next one,
For freestyle.
Well, that's just more national. But what happens is, especially at that time, there wasn't a lot of folk style stuff. You know what I mean? So if you were doing national level events, it felt like they had to be freestyle ones.
Sure.
But yeah, I started freestyle early on, and I loved it. We were promoted always to do freestyle and Greco, do both. We didn't really have any Greco coaches per se, so our philosophy or kind of what we were taught was like, hey, just go get matches in.
Right.
You don't need to go out there and throw the guy. You can pull him down in a front headlock and run around behind it. Don't care how you take him down. Just take him down and get on top of gut wrench him, right? So, yeah, we were kind of encouraged to do both. That way you're getting double the matches, double the mat time in. And then for me, as a kid, I was always kind of like, hey, I want to get every trophy possible. I want everything possible. So you talked about Fargo. Like, I want as many stop signs as I can possibly get. And I need to do Greco and freestyle to get both, to get the most, So, and that could have just been a personal thing. I know that there's certainly a lot of situations, especially it's kind of the rules of freestyle have changed. They're getting better. But I could see, I don't know if you remember, there was a time when they went best 2 out of 3 periods, right? So you would wrestle.
It wouldn't be a continuous point system. Yep, it would be completely different scores.
Yeah, I remember during that time thinking, like, I probably wouldn't have done Greco and freestyle because it would have, like, doubled my match time. And by that I mean, like, we just had, like, when you tech fall, the match is over. Well, of your 10 matches that you wrestle in freestyle, probably 6 or 8 of them are done in the first minute, right? Because you take the guy down, you can end the match real quick, right? Well, now I got to re-wrestle this guy again, so I'm gonna have tech fall every single guy twice to get out of the match. Like, I just remember thinking, like, wow, that would have made, like, doing both styles a lot harder.
Yeah,
because you're doubling your time, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So, and it's back to that now, but yeah, I would do 19 matches, throughout those, 4 or 5 days or whatever it was.
Was your 6 titles, is that 6 freestyle and 6 Greco? How are those split?
Nope. So, it was 3 in freestyle, 3 in Greco, and that would be at juniors, and then I won 1 as a cadet in Fargo. So, okay. I've got 7 stop signs from Fargo. They count 6 because juniors is kind of the toughest one, right? And you can only 3 is about the max. If you wanted to forego, like, your freshman year, the cadet division, and go straight to juniors, you could probably win 4. 4 junior titles. But yeah, 3 is about the most shots that you're going to get.
This is kind of shooting off topic and shooting more to nowadays, but you're probably in favor of women's wrestling going the freestyle route.
I mean, I don't know if this is popular or not, but yeah, I'm a fan of that. There is a great argument to keep folk style. I think there's a great argument that college wrestling should be freestyle. So yeah, I'm a big fan of freestyle. I'm not saying I like folk style is horrible or whatever, but I do think that right now freestyle is a really entertaining product. When you go and watch, even at the highest level where there's less points scored, it's exciting. I think kind of where we've gotten with college a little bit, where there's a lot of, like, the riding time emphasis, and you got a lot of matches where not a single point scored and the guy wins because he rode him out for the whole time,
Sure.
Outside looking in, as a spectator, like, that's just not entertaining. And I understand the control aspect and all the great things that make folk style wrestling really hard, right? I mean, it takes some freestyle guys and put them in there, and it's different. We've done it with some foreigners. So yeah, if I'm a fan of the women doing that, I think it's great. It makes a lot of sense.
Because to my understanding, next year all the collegiate wrestling for women is freestyle. Is that correct?
I don't know exactly, but I would guess, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the majority of it is. So maybe there was a couple divisions that were not, but I mean, it makes 100% sense that that's the way it should go,
So you grew up with Roy Hall. You're watching instructional videos with Tom and Terry Brands, already idolizing them or looking up to them or being influenced by them. Do you remember the first time that you met Tom and Terry Brands, and can you tell us about that?
Terry would have been a lot later. Tom was, to make sure I get this correct, unless Tom came and saw me at one of my events, it'd probably be the time that he came to my house to recruit me. It was probably the first time that I met him.
So you never went to a camp with him? You never went out to where, whether he was at Iowa wrestling or whatnot, or put on a camp in Michigan? You never went to one of his camps?
Nope, nothing like that, man. It was a philosophy. It was a way of wrestling. It was a mindset. It was like a purity to the sport of wrestling, you know? And again, all this is translated through Roy Hall, right? So we're watching highlight videos, essentially. You know, he's preaching in our ears, like, you see this, you see this, you see how they never quit wrestling, you see how they wrestle through the zone. Now, turns out that Roy was pretty darn close, because I've spent a lot of time with them, too,
Sure.
Tom and Terry. But yeah, you know, ironically, I tell people all the time, you know, when I was a kid, like, I didn't know nothing about Iowa wrestling. I didn't know anything about Dan Gable. All I knew was these Brands brothers, and I watched them wrestle a bunch, and then my coach said, hey, watch this. This is what they believe. This is how they train. This is how they compete. This is their philosophy. This is what we follow.
So, whenever you were approached to wrestling college, were you a full ride scholarship?
Yeah, when that was kind of my deal. It was like, hey, I want to be on a full ride, and that was the case for everywhere that recruited me. Yeah. And
so is you know, just for some of my wrestlers, you know, that are looking at this, or maybe people that are looking to get scholarships at college, and you know, I've talked to a couple different ones about how the scholarships work and stuff. So if it's a full ride, is that your housing, your tuition, your books, everything that's 100% paid? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways that word can be skewed, you know, now that I'm a college coach.
Of course.
But in general, if you're on a full ride, that means you're 1.0 of our scholarship. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're 1.0 of our scholarship, that means everything is covered from books, housing, food. So what really happens is after you get out of the dorms, you get a check every semester that covers your rent and your food.
Oh, okay.
So that's if you're a 1.0 guy. Now, and again, this is informational stuff for your kids, like you said. If you want to compare, you know, what's what, there's also a way that I could say, hey, we're covering everything, right? Like everything will be covered. And what that means is we're going to pay for your books in your school, but we're not putting you on 1.0, and essentially you won't be getting a check, which is cost of living, right?
Yeah.
So there can be a tweak, and that we sometimes get into that when we're recruiting with guys. You know, and again, it's not anything personal, right? But we're trying to, you know, we got 9.9 scholarships.
Right. You only have so many.
Certainly there's times when we're recruiting guys and we're like, hey, like, what is that coach really offering you? Because is he offering you like a 1.0 scholarship, or is he offering, like, on his books, it's really like 0.89?
Sure.
Right? Mm-hmm. So there could be a difference there, and that's probably worth questioning. And it doesn't mean that the coach is a liar or a cheater. It just to be educated of what means what, if that makes sense, right?
Is it 9.9 just for wrestling, or is so if it's football, it's going to be more than 9.9?
Yeah, no, football has,
okay.
Maybe you should know the number, but it's around about 100.
Okay. Why is it 9.9 and not 10?
I don't know. I think someone gave me that answer. I think somebody answered it for me once. It is weird. I don't know. I don't have the right answer for you. I could throw you some guesses, but it wouldn't be right.
Yeah.
It had to do, I believe it had to do with Title IX and when they started breaking that all up.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of where it landed. And again, I could be completely wrong. It's 9.9 right now, and and there's 10 starters.
Sure. So not everybody can get a full, complete 1.0 ride.
Yeah, it's not very often that guys are on that, because we try, I mean, in all honesty, we try not to do that because it eats up a lot of money, right?
So let's get into Iowa a little bit. People that follow you kind of know about your story at Virginia Tech. I started out there. Tom moved, you followed, you lost a year of eligibility, you know, and so on. So you're coming in, sophomore in college, coming into the Iowa wrestling room. You know, how were some of those practices ran during your sophomore year, now that you're officially on campus, you're officially able to go into the wrestling room? Kind of how was Tom and Terry doing things as far as practicing? How did those go?
Honestly, well, I guess at the time, Terry wasn't there. Terry came back a little bit later. Actually, my head coach was Tom, and then Doug Schwab, who's the UNI coach, and a guy that I ended up competing a lot with later on. He was my assistant coach. Terry came later. I don't know exactly the year, but it was kind of right at the end of my career. But as far as the practices went, no different than what I was used to be honest. I mean, they were hard, and they're hard because of the level of the opponent in front of you. Honestly, I tell Roy all the time, I'm like, man, like, the expectation, again, a lot of it has to do with the expectation, right? Like the amount of output, right? So even through high school, like what was expected of us, like the amount of energy. And when I say output, like if I wrestle a guy and we wrestle for 10 minutes and I score 2 takedowns, that ain't enough. That's not enough output. The expectation was the same, you know, which is when you compete, you put it all out there. You go and you attempt a lot of offense. It's more about a pace. So me walking in there was like going home, like walking into what I was just used to. Right? Like it was harder because the guys are better, but it definitely wasn't anything crazy because it's what I was raised on. It was the expectation I was raised on, which is, you know, your job is to go in there and to score so many points that this guy wants to quit and walk out of practice. So I don't know. I imagine someone not raised that way would come in and it would be like, oh my God, this is crazy. But to me, it was natural, and it was harder, right? I'm not saying they are hard because the opponents are better. The guys out in front of you are better, you know. So yeah, I would say that I remember thinking like, wow, this is nuts. I had the mentality of like, hey, new room, new people to take out, so I could be the man.
That's right.
So.
Very good. So is Tom's coaching style during practice, is that very structured? Did you come in and you always did, you know, we'll just say an example, 15-minute warm-ups, then he's going to do, 3 or 4 techniques, and he's going to do drilling, then he's going to let you do live, or is it just very random, different times? How does Tom run a practice?
Well, as far as the time of day, always consistent, the exact same time, practice every day. How practice is run, I'm going to guess, and again, I can't speak for Tom and what his philosophy is, but how I kind of remember it is a lot more probably on your own than what you would expect.
Okay.
So by that, I mean there's development. There's certainly times where he's going to step in and he's going to run the warm-up, but there's a lot of times where he's going to come in and say, get warmed up and go. All right? And really what that means is like, it's on you. Like I said, like, go out there and break the guy in front of you.
Sure.
You know, so I don't know what they do now, but yeah, that was 30-minute, 45-minute, trying to make the other guy fall over. And that was on you. And again, that was right up my alley because that was right how I was brought up, which is that way. So every time's the periods, training periods were different. So summer was different. There was a lot more learning in the summertime. So yeah, but generally I would say probably a little bit more on your own than you would expect.
A lot of emphasis on live?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of live.
Okay.
A lot of, and by that I mean, I don't know, 50% of the practice. That was my experience, at least.
Was Tom still getting on the mat at that time?
When I was at Virginia Tech, we wrestled, him and I did. I think in Iowa, we wrestled once or twice, and then kind of like phased out of that. No, but he's on the mat teaching technique, yeah, he's on the mat working and sweating every day. But not like shake hands, let's wrestle live. And now as a coach, I know that there's just like a certain period you get to, which is good, right? Like you coach your athlete up, and it's like, all right, like you might break my hip if because at some point you can kind of outman strength them and you can outposition them. But once they learn how to use their body and their pop and their speed and their strength and their power, it's like, man, that's all gone for me. So, yeah, I kind of put myself in a position where you could really mess me up if you wanted to, So, but he still had it. I remember the last thing I remember from wrestling with Tom is what felt like he gave me the first couple takedowns, and he was just kind of hand fighting with me and hanging on my hands or my arms. I remember like some point, like I couldn't pick my arms up anymore, and then he started hitting leg attacks.
Really?
Like right at that point where like I couldn't move my arms, I was like, geez, my arms are so tired. Then he started hitting leg attacks, And it was good to feel that because I'm like, like that's it. So the hand fighting is right, like I'm making you work, and now you wonder why offense works so well, right? It's because I've kind of worn you out, right? It's because I'm making you resist this.
I'm more asking because national champion, Olympic gold medalist, right? I mean, this is, 10 or 15 years after that. I could see why this dude was at an absolute another level than everybody else.
Those guys were probably closer to how I was, which was I'm going to outwork and I'm going to out-hustle you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to out-position you, okay? So when you grab a hold of a guy like that, you may not be all that impressed. What you may think to yourself is like, man, I can't do anything against this guy.
Uh-huh.
So I think even now, I wrestle a lot of my guys, they may be so much faster and stronger than me, but they don't understand like hand position all that well. So I can kind of completely control everything that's going on just because I'm like positionally just better than them, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that's kind of how I looked at it. It was like it felt that way. It felt like I can't do anything compared to kind of how you describe it, which I would think of like sometimes that I've wrestled Jordan Burroughs, where he's just blasting you off your feet and he's hitting like unbelievable holds and you're just like, oh my God.
Uh-huh.
Or not, how about this? Lincoln McElravy. Again, super athletic guy. I wrestled him.
Mm-hmm.
That was a guy, again, and he was way older. He was out of shape. He just came in and wrestled for like 15 minutes. But I remember wrestling him and thinking to myself, geez, like, what the heck? How is this guy? I can't even take this guy down, and I'm like in the best shape of my life. And that didn't go long because he was like, all right, we're done, good,
Yeah.
But so yeah, I would just say stylistically wise, it felt like wrestling a wall compared to wrestling McElravy was more slick and kind of funky stuff, know? So I don't know if that answers the question exactly, but that's kind of...
Another person that I really like from Iowa, Mark Ironside, which I'm trying to also set up an interview with him as well. I know he's busy with his apparel company and things. But he had a very similar style to yours, kind of in your face, fight the whole time. Did he ever come to the room and did you ever wrestle him?
Yeah, I wrestled Mark a whole mess of times.
And how was that?
Same thing. I mean, these guys were kind of way out of their prime, so the periods that you had with them were short. But Mark was like, well, here's a funny story about Mark. So I was this highly touted recruit, right? I go to Virginia Tech. Tom comes to Iowa. During that period, we couldn't even be on campus at the University of Iowa. So I was trained at the Olympic Training Center. I had gone through all of that. I came back a little bit early, but we couldn't even step foot in the Iowa wrestling room like until classes started, right? So I would go up to Coe College. They had some sort of open mat or something that I would just wrestle with. And the first time I went up, Mark Ironside was there. And I had known the name kind of, and he was like, hey, let's wrestle. And he beat the living crap out of me. Like, he pummeled me, right? So this would have been, 2 years before I ever won a national title. So he beat me up. And afterward, because I was with all those other guys that transferred with me, they later on said that Mark went up to him and was like, hey, like, I thought that this kid was supposed to be good. Like, you guys are all excited about this Metcalf kid. He sucks, man.
Wow. Already poking the bull.
He did. He beat the living crap out of me. That's because I remember. I remember getting tired. So our matches later was the same thing where he was so amazing at. So like Tom and kind of how we were, what I was better at was like a consistent pull, if that makes any sense. So like I always related to like take 75-pound dumbbells and try to put them on your hands and then just lay them on you. So a consistent, like the whole time you wrestle, you're gonna feel the weight of my hands, and it's not going to get pulled off you. Where Mark was really good at like tug. Mm-hmm. So it was like, a dog, it's got a hold of your hand and it's just yanking on you. So you're constantly pulling it back. That's how he felt because he had a bunch of really short snaps.
Sure.
So he was tough. And by the time I was wrestling Mark, and years later, I was bigger than him, and it was still good. I mean, you had to be ready to go. And again, at that time, he had maybe like a half a practice in him or something. But Mark and I are actually really good friends now. So
good. He
introduced me to turkey hunting, and we've been out west elk hunting together. And so, yeah, Mark and I have kind of remained pretty close. So,
did he help you a lot with your technique side and things like that in college?
No, because he wasn't in the room all that much. I'm just going to guess, like once a month or once every other month. Like it was just kind of random when he would show up. So yeah, he was busy doing his thing, and he'd show up and say, "All right, let's go." And there wasn't a whole lot of. Now he'd teach me like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing," after practice. But where a lot of that growth comes is like that continuous, like everyday work. So that's like your assistant coaches, or your assistant coaches or your head coach or whoever's grabbed me in the morning. Putting you through like your reps and your reps and your reps. All right, tweak this, adjust this. All right. So
I was really hoping that you guys work together because, like I said, I think your styles are very similar. At least just straight ahead. A lot of hand fighting, a lot of clubbing, a lot of forward pressure, a lot of not giving you any space. So I compare like I don't know if you know much about boxing, but like a Mike Tyson in his prime versus like a Joe Frazier. They just both run at each other and just punch the whole time. Like it would be a good match. So that's cool.
Those happened in the dungeons at Carver Hawkeye Arena. So and there weren't cell phones at the time. So everything was top secret back then, right?
I know the story, and I think it's a good story, and I kind of laugh at it. But can you tell us the story about when you and the team were running hills, and Mark Perry was last? How did that story go?
Well, that wasn't the hills, but that was our soccer field. So we would go, and we had a big soccer field, and we had to run laps around it. I feel like this was like summer training, so I was just fresh there from Virginia Tech. Right, wrong, or different, like I came in like, hey, I'm the man, like I'm going to hold myself to that standard, right? So I kind of operated like I was the man, And again, who am I to think that I can just come in and do that? But yeah, essentially, there's a workout where Mark was in last place. And, when you got a wrestling team, you've got a wide variety of people that can run, and you've got heavyweights that can't run. And then you've got Mark Perry. You shouldn't be behind the heavyweights, right? Me being young and dumb, I suppose, or it probably maybe was the right thing. I kind of stepped up and was yelling at him. Again, that's a lot of that rooted from Davison again, right? Like there's a standard and an expectation, and at some point it was like the wrestlers carried that standard and expectation, right? And to me, that's what made us great then and made the University of Iowa when we were there. Was we all held each other that standard. The coaches are, steering that ship too, but, I've told a lot of people a lot of times, the best thing that happened would be, like, after a dual meet, the coaches didn't have to go up to one of the athletes and say, hey, man, you only won by a point, or you were stalling. Because that night, in our house where we all lived together, I would be saying it. Sure. I'd be like, dude, what the heck? You were stalling for the last 2 minutes of that match, right? Or vice versa. Or they'd be dogging me, or we'd be dogging each other. And it goes back to the same thing, like where you had the who's going to get the most pins and stuff like that. Internally, the team was bought in, and they were pushing each other. And to me, that is the best influence you can have, is when you've got that team, like, essentially saying what the coach wants to say, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of what I experienced and learned through high school. And I'm thinking that's what I was trying to do with Mark Perry there, which is say, hey, man, this ain't acceptable to me. And kind of set a standard for like, hey, like if that's how you're going to, if you think you're going to be a national champ and be in last place, like I'm not going to be cool with that because it matters to me too. So, yeah. And again, when we were winning the 3 national titles we won, that's how it felt. We were tight. We were all friends, but we held each other accountable. And if you thought for a second that you were going to get to slip from that standard, your teammate was going to remind you, and I'm sure the coaches were too, but it's more powerful when it comes from your best friend saying, hey man, like you got more in you than it is from your coach.
Absolutely. And that's something, me as a coach, I want kids to buy into it. This is only my second year. Well, we finished our second season here at Sun Valley where I'm at, and coming into a program that's, just really, well, COVID really kind of messed things up, for everybody, but the numbers were down. Hasn't been a coach in the building for a long time, so the program, it kind of went down a little bit. So coming in, new coach, it takes a while to get kids to buy in. They don't know me. They aren't as passionate about wrestling as I am, kind of thing, maybe one kid is, but, but now they're starting to buy in. it's nice. It's awesome when, as a coach, you see the kids are now preaching what you're preaching. The kids are now getting on each other, whether it's, I want to practice hard, you got to practice hard with me, or, hey, we know that if you don't help clean up the room, we all got to, well, I call it a beach vacation is what I call it. It's tire flipping and carrying around sandbags is what I call it a beach vacation. They're like, I don't want to do a beach vacation. You got to go pick that up. So I like when the kids kind of buy in, because when it's just the coach saying, but no one else is saying it too, it's rough. It makes it hard as a coach, so I'm just trying to build 100%. The culture.
What happens then, too, is those kids go home or whatever, whether in their classroom or whatever, and they're saying, man, can you believe coaches, right? So a downward spiral is actually occurring sometimes. Mm-hmm. So for sure, and it's tough because you got to have the right kids with the right personality. Mm-hmm. It helps a lot if those guys are some of the best guys on your team, mm-hmm. right? So if your best leaders are your best guys, it helps you say, hey, Johnny's got room to talk. Because Johnny's winning, right? So we want to follow John. If Johnny's saying, hey, we need to run hard, well, he runs hard, then I guess I should run hard too, because I want to do what Johnny's doing,
We've come a long way. I'm more of a life coach, wanting them to be successful, because the majority of them, they're going to wrestle in high school and never wrestle again. So I just want them to be successful in life, find something that they're good at, be a good person in class, be a good person on the mat. Yeah. I say beast on the mat, gentleman off the mat, and, just stuff like that. Like, I want them to be, hard workers and things like that. But it takes some time, but it's nice because 3 kids, they actually went up on their own up to Virginia to a Roman Bravo Young Camp. They went up there. That was a 6-hour drive. I had a local coach. His name's Rob Tate. He coaches for Queens in Charlotte, which is a Division I school. He did a camp for us. I had 11 of our kids there, at the middle school and high school level. Yeah. After the season, I usually take about a month and a half off before I start the off season, because I was running the high school, helping out with the middle school, and doing the youth myself. So it's like, I was burnt out. Yeah. Burnt out. Mm-hmm. But I had the kids after a couple weeks knocking on the door saying, hey, coach, you care if we roll the mats out? And I'm like, is that what you guys want? They're like, yeah, we want to roll the mats out and wrestle. I'm like, okay, well, let's go do it. So, we've been doing that for 4 weeks, and our spring session just started. But officially, I kind of just let them do live. I didn't really do any structure. They just wanted to get the mats out and roll. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's great. So, Gable, when did you meet Dan Gable, and how much of influence was he on you after you got to Iowa?
So when Tom took the job, he hired Gable as his assistant for that first year, just to start the whole thing off, I guess, He was a bit around. Probably my best stuff that I've got from Gable is everything after that year. Because ironically, he's obviously been around the program for a lot of years, and then ironically, he lives just a few doors down from where my wife's family lived there in Iowa City. Mm-hmm. So I kind of saw him a lot. Even sometimes when I go visit family over holidays, I'll bump into him, Yeah, some of the best times or things with Gable would be kind of those away from the mat things. And again, a lot of it's just up my alley, but, Dan is probably a whole nother level than me, Mm-hmm. Certainly, the minute you think you're doing something good, at least how he approached me, it was always he was kind of a funny old guy, Mm-hmm. But he'd be like, oh, was that good enough? Did you do good enough? Or is there some more you could do? Or so I don't know. I appreciate the way he kind of challenged me. The minute you think, hey, I've got things going, and he just reminded you, which is, again, how I'm kind of wired, reminding you, hey, there's more levels out there. I think you got more to it, or I think you can do more. So, yeah, again, not a whole lot of time, not really a whole lot of even, little coaching stuff, hey, try this thing, or try this adjustment, right? But more just kind of talking.
Sure.
I think mentor type of stuff like that, so.
Yeah, and definitely from listening to just about everything I can on him as well. He was a button pusher. If getting you upset means that you're going to get upset and you're going to do better, he's going to make you upset. If making you think is going to make you get better, he's going to make you think. He's one that's going to get into your mind and play some mind games with you, but in a positive way to try to make you get better. So everybody's a little different. So I listened to a podcast yesterday because I was going to ask you about your toughest opponent. You mentioned the Cuban.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes back to the earlier when I said, when you grabbed one of these wrestlers, whether it's Tom or whether it's Mark or whether it's Lincoln, you could just tell right away, oh, okay, this dude's serious. So tell us again about, I don't remember the Cuban's name, but can you please tell us what his name was and then, how you knew after that first tie-up that he was just at a completely different level than you?
Yeah, it was Garzon, and he was probably one of the, at least during my little era there, one of the best wrestlers that, again, those Cubans, they take money, man. So I remember my first World Championships. That guy was in a quarter bracket. So I lost my first match. I lost to the Olympic bronze medalist. All right, and I was like, dang, but, unfortunately, again, I wrestled so darn hard, the guy couldn't even barely walk the next match and lost, so then that means you're out, right? Because that guy has to make the finals, right? But I remember looking at a quarter bracket, so I was kind of bummed and thinking, like, man, I made the World Championships, and I can't even place. Like, I'm not even close to where I think I am. And in that quarter bracket was the Olympic champ, the world champ, and I think the world silver medalist, right? And then the Cuban. So there's four of them. He beat them all. He beat them all, and then he got to the semis, and he threw the match against the Russian. And by that, I mean, he stood there, didn't do anything, and let the guy take him down in the end to win. So then I got to thinking, I'm like, man, I don't suck that bad. Because the Olympic champ, the world champ, and the world silver medalist, all in that little quarter bracket, they all went 0-1 too.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But he was great. He was kind of like winding down, I would say. His career was a bit. But yeah, as far as feeling him, it was one of them deals where, and we've got some Cuban guys in our room now that I understand. They're just so fast and so athletic, and kind of how I describe. I remember thinking I was hand fighting with him, and then he'd just be around behind me. And I would be like, what the heck just happened? Like, the guy's behind me. I guess I should jump to my belly now and defend. Mm-hmm. Crazy speed that, like, you didn't even feel him touch you. He just appeared behind you is how it felt,
Was it from a snap down, or was it from a drag, or, I mean, what was it?
So ironically, I couldn't even tell you because we would pay these young Cuban kids to film all of our matches, right? Mm-hmm. And they would film them all, but when we would wrestle Cubans, so when I wrestled this guy, the match started and then they recorded the mat. They turned it straight down. And the whole thing was they recorded the mat and then they picked it up and they, when he got his hand raised, that was the end. So I couldn't even tell you. I'm going to guess it was like an arm drag or something like that was what he kept hitting me with. But yeah, people have asked that before and I'm like, well, they did record the video.
Yeah. You heard people cheering, but you have no idea what happened. So who was in college that would be similar weight as you? Who would you say would be the absolute just strongest competitor? Because I know you said the Cuban was probably the toughest. Palmer was extremely tough. But who was just like the absolute strongest? Like he grabbed a hold of your wrist and you're like, geez.
You want to go wrist? I mean, Palmer was probably one of the strongest. Palmer and Molinaro was kind of that same deal where they're these little strong boxy guys. And those guys are just naturally really kind of hard to move. But as far as a wrestler that I wrestled, he's from Purdue, Pataxical is his name. Jake Pataxical. I can't say it right. Mm-hmm. But either way, his hands were huge. Mm-hmm. And he was a dude where, like, I've seen matches where he'd be getting his butt kicked, and if he'd get on top, he'd tech for you. Yeah. Because he was so good at getting your wrist. So that was a guy that I could never forget, and he would grab your wrist and hold on to it, and you couldn't you couldn't get him off you. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to score on him because he had a hold of your wrist the entire time. But yeah, I remember early on, like I used to force myself to go down. I'm like, listen, I'm going down on this guy, whether I lose or not, because like that's his greatest position. I got to challenge myself. Like I have to go down on him, and I got to get away from him. Again, it's not about being undefeated. It was about like my path, right? Like this guy's great here. I need to challenge myself here.
This kind of goes on to a different tangent. Speaking of grip strength, were you on the team when Robles won the championship when he beat McDonough?
Well, I mean, I was there, but I was. Okay. I think that was after. I want to say that was the year after I graduated.
And it's a funny story. Like, that would be a cool dude to interview. At the beginning, he's like, oh, the poor kid, the poor one-legged kid, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then he starts winning. And then they're like, oh, he's cheating because he has one leg. I mean, that's just mind-boggling that people would say that. But I guarantee his grip strength from, walk around on crutches and, using his hand, his feet kind of, and, basically having the upper body of a 182 and he weighs 125, Did you talk to McDonough ever about Robles? Did he say anything about his grip strength was probably just off the charts?
Yeah, I mean, he could probably tell you better, but that's exactly what I remember, is that he was just crazy strong. Crazy strong. Yep. And then I've done it before. I've wrestled a guy once without a leg. He wasn't at Robles' level, but nothing makes sense. Like, like in wrestling, you should be able to close your eyes and wrestle. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is, like, all your things basically, like, it's not there. Because you're missing a big piece, a big handle, know? So it's so hard because you're not doing it. And then if you go to the hip, that's what you're taught not to do, right? So now they can scramble out of a lot of positions. So I've done it before, and it's so hard. It's so hard, and everything is hard. And by that I mean, like, you're using a ton of energy just to do what would normally, be maybe routine. So, I remember McDonough talking about how strong he was,
has been kind of on just a long streak of having just insanely good 125ers. I mean, not even looking back to when Terry and Tom were wrestling, but you got McDonough, who was awesome, and then Tom Skillman came in, and he might have been a little bit better than McDonough. Even you're like, holy cow, who's this dude? And then Lee comes in. It's like, wow, they have just got the best 125er, it seems like, for the last, 12, 15 years in a row. So it's kind of neat. So let's move on to the more recent part of your life. So when did you realize that you wanted to be a coach, or has that kind of been the goal the whole time?
I would say that I've always had the feeling that I would probably want to go into coaching just because of my passion for the sport. And and by that I mean, like, I love wrestling. I love doing wrestling, but I love, like, I don't even know how to say it right. Like, I love the mental aspect of wrestling. I love, like, it's so much deeper to me than just going out and doing moves. It's a very personal thing. It's a thing that, like Gable's quote, like, once you've done this, like, once you've put yourself through all of this, like, anything's possible. Like, nothing is hard. And I like to try to communicate that and try to get guys to understand that. So I've always been, I don't know, I use the word purist. Like, I'm a wrestling purist as much as it can be. About wrestling the right way, doing it the hard way, and having a lot of pride in that. Back to your question, I guess, is I've always felt like I've always enjoyed sharing that with people and, working through things with guys, with teammates and stuff. So, I always kind of figured that was somewhere where I would land. But I didn't know, too. I mean, you don't know. Like, again, you don't have to be great to be a coach, but it helps if you're successful,
Sure.
So you don't know as you're going through college how things are going to pan out. And then, honestly, like, things have kind of changed. I mean, I was a high school coach for a year, and probably one of the hardest jobs is being a high school coach, right? Mm-hmm. Because the amount of time and energy it requires, and you essentially don't get paid for it, right? Like, it has to be your passion, right?
Oh, for sure.
And I just remember thinking, like, as I was going through, like, I don't know, like, and I get a wife, and I'm trying to figure out, like, hey, like, is this sustainable? Is being a coach sustainable? Like, can you really make a living, like a good living or honest living doing this? Like, I would love to do it, but at some point in time, I wasn't even sure. And it's changed. It's gotten better, at least from a college point of view, where that was definitely like, all right, it's becoming to get better where, your whole family doesn't have to be broke and you're away from home all the time. Mm-hmm. Because my family's really important to me. I mean, I've got a tattoo on my back that says family first, and it's not just there, it's how I really feel. So I take all that into balance. So did I know I always wanted to be a coach? Yeah. But I just wasn't sure what that landscape was going to look like once I got there. Does that make any sense?
Oh, 100%.
if you told me tomorrow, that I didn't have to pay bills and I could be a wrestling coach the rest of my life, awesome.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's kind of what, and then again, I was young and I didn't know anything. So that's kind of what my mind was going through. It was like, I hope that this is feasible. I hope that I can do this, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I know you coached high school for a year. I mean, you wanted to be a D1 college coach? Like, that's what you wanted to do? Or was it just you just wanted to be part of a program?
My time at Iowa had kind of come up, and I was in a position where I couldn't leave because my wife was finishing her PhD. So I had some opportunities to go to some other colleges, but I kind of had to be like, listen, guys, like, my wife has an entire year left, so, like, I can't leave. I can't move states and leave her here. So me leaving wasn't an option. So I kind of had a whole year where I was kind of just stuck in Iowa City helping. We had 2 kids at the time, kind of waiting for her to get through her PhD program, right? So I had an opportunity to go to a local high school and help out there and be an assistant coach there. So that's kind of how that worked out. But it was probably the best thing I ever did. I knew I wanted to be Division I because, like, again, the way that I operate, like, I want to be with guys that want to be great, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that want to be great at the highest level, right? Like, I'm probably too high strung for the high school level. By that, I mean, like, it's just hard for me to be like, what do you mean you don't want to be the greatest?
I know what you're saying, and you've said this before about you coming in to a high school program, trying to do it exactly how you did it, trying to make everybody have the same mindset as you, and why in the world do you not want this? Like, I've definitely dealt with things like that as a coach myself. My background is actually in judo first, and wrestling actually came later. I was a judo player as a teen, and then went to college and competed at judo at the college level, which, if you know anything about judo, very similar to wrestling, so it kind of just, they don't teach judo at the high school level, so I went into wrestling, and, so I'm very passionate about grappling, and I put in all this work and stuff, and then it's like, geez, like, why do you kids not feel the same way that I do? Like, you kind of beat your head about it a little bit, but it's some give and take. When you were talking about that, I definitely related to that. Like, you kind of had to say, okay, well, this kid's only here because he wants to lose a couple pounds, or this kid's only here because his football coach said, hey, we want you to wrestle to get better at football, so he's not there to wrestle, he's there for football. You have to be a little bit more open-minded. Yeah,
and that's why it was great for me, honestly, is my development as a coach, right, is to not just see it down my lane and like, hey, this is how it is. Like, hey, no, everyone's got a little bit different goal out of this thing, or everyone's got a different way that they can get accomplished what they want to get accomplished in the sport. It was probably one of the best things that I ever did, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm going to give my kids a hug here. Come here.
No problem.
Good job. Good work. Who are you talking to? Bye, honey. I'll see you in a minute, okay? Okay. Sorry, I've been sitting outside my son's soccer field watching him play soccer this whole time. So he was supposed to have soccer practice, and it turned into a game today. So
well, that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Me and my wife, I'm 40, so I'm a little bit older than you, and we're actually having our first in August. So we're kind of excited. Nice. Long story, not to get too personal, but we're told we couldn't have kids. Tried, went to the doctors, did all this, went on medicine, and, even after all that, they're like, it's going to be really hard, almost impossible for you guys. So we kind of just accepted it. And then a couple of months ago, my wife is like, so I haven't been feeling good, this and that, missed the time of the month kind of thing. And I'm like, maybe you should go get a test, I guess. And she's like, I already took it. I said, oh, yeah? And she's like, I'm pregnant. And I'm just like, no way. You're messing with me, right? Because we were told it's impossible. Because, anyway, but we're really excited. So that's kind of, what we're looking forward to. So that's going to come in August. So, it's going
to change your life. Don't be ready to not sleep anymore.
Sure. We'll wrap it up so that I'm not taking too much more of your time.
No, it's all right. It's all right. It's game's done with. He just wanted to come say hi. He was all excited. So.
Is it 4 kids, 3 boys and 1 girl? What are their names and their ages?
I've got Chase, Cole, and Wyatt, and then Georgia. So Chase is 10, Cole is about to turn 8, Wyatt is 6, and Georgia is 2.
My name is Cole. So that's actually my middle name, but that's what I go by. But yeah, that's a cool name. A little bit back to wrestling. So what is your role at Iowa State? I know you're an assistant coach, but like, what is your, what are a couple of your responsibilities?
I mean, it's everything, all encompassing. It ebbs and flows with the season. So it's all hands on deck as far as recruiting goes. Coach Dresser kind of leads the charge a lot of that. And then we fill in. And by that, I mean, it could change at any given time. But as far as the recruiting goes, we're out doing a lot of the scouting. We'll have different individual guys that maybe we're communicating more closely with. That's kind of split up a little bit. So that's from a recruiting front. From a day-to-day practice, I would say Coach Dresser runs most of the practices, but he does a good job of just every other week, he has one of the coaches run practice, at least. And we'll kind of discuss, like, hey, this is what we want to get out of this week. So maybe he'll say, hey, I'm going to run Monday, Derek, you run Tuesday, Brent Wednesday, or a version of that. We'll have our practice duties as well. And then, then freestyle. Like, so this time of season, I'm running almost all the practices just because of my background in freestyle and my passion with it, that it just kind of makes sense that I run those things, I guess, right? And let's see, day to day, I mean, there's a lot of just little things that I guess don't seem like they matter, but that you're doing, whether it's like, there's a lot of graphics, there's a lot of, whether you're set things up for camp, there's just, for some reason, I've been delegated as the guy that understands technology, even though I don't very much. And then I guess the last thing is I'm like the gear guy. So I work with our gear staff to make sure our guys have new cool clothing, cool shoes. If we give any gifts or anything like that, clothing-wise or award-wise, it's kind of on me to come up with those and stay on top of it to make sure our guys are getting all the latest and greatest stuff. So,
you come into Iowa State.
Yeah.
Was Dresser already there, or did Dresser bring you in year 1?
He brought me year 1.
Okay.
So, he was, it was kind of a weird transition. I think they got rid of the previous coach, like, before the NCAA tournament, and then they hired Dresser. So Dresser was like technically the head coach for the team that he's never even spoken to. Like during the NCAA tournament, it was a weird thing.
That's strange.
Yeah, it was strange. So I think he just had like the assistant coaches like, hey man, like I'm not going to step in. Like you guys just finish the season out.
Sure. Well, yeah.
So that would have been in March, and then I was brought in June. I was with him year 1.
Not asking for you to give away any secrets or anything, but I mean, you guys have really brought Iowa State back, right? I mean, you guys are at the top of the pecking order again, a force, in the nation. What's some of the things that you'd like to share with us? What have you guys done to get to the level you're at now?
I guess I've said this a number of times too. Probably the best thing I ever did was join Dresser on this mission, right? Let's just call it that. And by that, I mean, when I look back and I think, like, had I joined a program that was already top 10 or, one that was already winning, Penn State, right? I feel like I would have missed out on some stuff that was really important as far as the development of taking this program from where it's at to where it is now. And some of that stuff is obvious stuff, so, like, recruiting. And then we took a lot of lumps recruiting, right? Like, learning, like, all right, well, we're ranked 50th in the country, so it's not just that easy just to go nab the number 1 guy in the country and say, hey, come to our program, right? Mm-hmm. So taking some lumps that way was really good, just for me to learn, like, the sort of consistency it requires, and also the sort of kind of heartbreaking is, I mean, sometimes you get so invested with these guys, you spend so much energy, and then they're like, yeah, I'm going to this other school. And you're like, man, I thought I had this guy. That's a piece of it. And then also, just all the other stuff outside of wrestling, right? So the whole, like, nothing's different as far as the development, like, in the room every day, like, And again, the wrestling coach stuff is exactly what I expected and exactly what I love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is grab a guy, spend time with him, work on his skills, break down video, all that stuff is about what I expected, and it's been good. But it's all the other stuff too, like, it's more than just, when you think of our season ticket sales, right? Like our season ticket sales has been the highest they've ever been for the last 3 years consecutively, right?
Congrats.
That didn't just happen because, like, we showed up, right? Like, there's a lot of work and a lot of events and a lot of promotion. I always tease Dresser, like, he's got all these bonehead ideas that I think are silly, and then when they're executed, I'm like, man, you were right. Like, that was a really good idea. But he had the balls to do it. He had the guts to go out and, like, put his neck out and, like, say, hey, let's try to run this program. Let's try to do these socials. Let's try to, these things that, like, I don't know, you could go do it and no one could ever show up. And they were small at first, and then they grow and grow and grow. And to me, it's just like energy, right? Like, we've been building this energy up for the last 6 years. So it's all encompassing, because obviously winning and all that stuff helps, and getting the good recruits and developing the guys is huge. But the whole thing, it was a big puzzle. It wasn't just wrestling alone. And that's what I'm grateful to be a part of, is to see what that process looked like. To take it from literally the bottom to, we're not at the top, but we're hovering outside, like, trying to make our strike, so.
It's good. I feel a lot of pride myself in, it's not me, obviously. It's the kids and it's the other coaches and, and it's things like that. But I'm happy that my first year, we only won 1 dual meet, and this year we won 12. So, statistically, like, everything went up, so it's like stuff like that is just, you get from the bottom and you come up. I like that story about when Kevin Dresser, he's coaching at the high school level, and then he gets an idea for a bingo fundraiser. You know that story?
Yeah, I know all about the bingo.
Man,
yeah.
I can't, raise like $2 million the first year for a high school program. It's just like, whoa, dude, know. But
that was the deal about there is, if your kid came to school, everything was covered.
That's awesome.
All the Fargo trips, all the Beast to East, any of the competition, you didn't pay for it because it was all fundraised through the bingo hall, right? So the parents helped out, and again, being underneath that, so that's his mind. That's the mind that we're working with every day,
Mm-hmm.
Again, you tell me, hey, I'm going to go start a bingo hall to raise money for the wrestling team. I'm like, you're crazy. What are you talking about?
Right.
But it worked, right? And a lot of things that we've done have been unbelievably successful. And, again, I'm just grateful to have been able to go through that, because it did open my mind, right?
Sure.
I was probably a little bit more of a hardcore, like, nothing matters but the wrestling. Show up and work hard, right? Well, there's just a lot more to it.
There's a lot more to it at the high school level as well.
Yep.
I'm coming into a closet with a cardboard box of singlets, barely enough to cover the team. That's what I'm coming into, So what is the end game for Brent Metcalf? Do you want to be a head Division I coach? Do you want to open your own wrestling school? Do you enjoy just being an assistant?
I think that being a head coach is something I'd really like to do. Again, just kind of my personality, just kind of put my stamp on something, And to see where you're at, too, like, it's not easy, And it would be a heck of a challenge to go out and see if I could carry the torch and do the sort of things we've been able to do. And college sports is a funny thing, so it's so hard to say or know when and where that opportunity will be. I'm sure happy where I'm at now, and I told people in the past too, like, I don't feel like I'm in a hurry, because I'm learning, I feel pretty good about where I'm at, but I do every year, especially with, man, we're in a whole different world with this name, image, likeness, with these transfer portal, the game just changed, like, overnight.
Sure.
It's different, Yeah, you either adapt or you fall behind. That's really what is going to happen. I enjoy and I love Ames. I love the state of Iowa. So I'm certainly in no hurry to do anything. But you never know what opportunities come up. So
sure.
I'm the sort of guy that I don't close any doors. I keep open-minded about most things, and yeah, so you never know.
All right, last three things, and I'll let you go. I don't even know if words can describe how thankful I am for this.
Yeah.
3 questions. They're 3 advice questions. First one is, what advice would you give to a beginning wrestler? Let's say it is an 8th grader or a freshman that has never wrestled and is thinking about wrestling.
Oh, man. My advice would be to learn as much as you can and have fun. And have fun with it. And by that, I mean, it's not going to be fun all the time, but you get to choose how you think about things. So what I mean by that is if your mindset is like, oh, I have to go do this practice today, well, maybe it's not for you. But if it's, hey, I get to do this, I get an opportunity today to really push myself and see, again, I'm a beginner. I've never taken down Johnny in front of me. I get an opportunity every day to try to get that takedown, right? So let's see if today's the day. That sort of attitude, I think, will serve you well. And then you never know how far you'll get. You never know. Guys, especially at that 8th grade when they're starting, it's really hard because you're so far behind. But you can catch up really fast compared to, like a 6-year-old kid. Like, it takes them some time, to learn. You can learn. You just got to stay in there, and you got to keep fighting, and you got to keep coming to practice every day with a good attitude.
Awesome. Okay, what about advice to a kid that has been wrestling for a while? Maybe we can even take one of my wrestlers, had some success at the middle school level, took 4th in the state, very active, good leader, good kid, good grades. He's coming into high school, and he wants to be a 4-timer. His brother was a 4-time finalist, 3-time state champion here in North Carolina, and he wants to be a 4. What advice could you give to someone like that wants to get to that next level?
I would say be creative. And here's what I mean when I say that. You got to be very creative with your mind and how you approach your training. So I'm going to guess if he's pretty good, he's generally beaten most of the guys in the room. So how are you going to continue to separate yourself, right? So when I say be creative, I mean set goals for yourself that are crazy. Right, I remember coming into practices thinking, I need to score 100 points today. It didn't matter how good or bad the guy in front of me was. Like, I want to score 100 points. I would set goals for myself that I could maybe even reach, but it would keep me chasing something. It would keep me chasing something because the reality is I was beating everybody, and I was generally beating guys by a lot. So it would have been really easy for me to, think, hey, I got this. I'm the man. Right? And the minute, and again, this is my philosophy, it's one of them deals where, you don't plateau. You're either going up or you're going down. And the minute you settle and you think, hey, I'm good, you're going to go the other way. So my way of handling that was to continue to creatively make scenarios in my head and push myself. And again, some guys can't handle this, but it almost like it's never enough, right? It's never enough. If I got a tech fall, well, I didn't get a pin. Could I tech fall and pin him? If I won by 9, could I have won by 10? Right? In a very positive way. Not, oh, I suck, I didn't win by 10. It's, I'm excited to come back to work the next day because I know I can be better. Right? I know that I could have done more. Right? So that was something, again, at a little bit higher level that helped me stay really dialed in and really hungry. Because when you're talking about winning 4 state titles, I mean, that means you won 2 or 3 of them already. So how are you going to stay hungry? And then before even that, if he's coming into there, you want to win as a freshman, you better be thinking at a really high level, right? You better be expecting that I'm going to win, but I'm not trying to I'm just trying to win by a point. That can't be okay. I might win by a point if I have to, right? That might happen. But when I win by a point, I'm going to be all right, I want to do better than that. So what am I going to do, right? Am I going to put extra drill time in? Am I going to go run some sprints afterward? Or what am I going to do to help myself mentally separate myself from everybody else?
So what about the last would be maybe a coach like myself. My goal, like I said, I'm not chasing a state title. I mean, obviously, I'm a coach, and it would be awesome if we could get one, and I would be happy if we did. And I always tell the kids that the wins will come if you put in the hard work. The wins will come. The medals will come if you put in the hard work. But I'm trying to change the culture here. I'm trying to take a school that is actually the oldest wrestling in the county. They were the first, and the original coach from 1972 is still alive. And I went and I had breakfast with him over the summer. He's still going, and they had the best wrestling program in the area multiple times. So it's been like a wave, like you said, like Davison has. So what advice can you give to me as somebody that wants to change the culture, have success again, have a room full of kids with multiple, kids at each weight, and then kids going on to be successful and, get in the stands a little fuller and all that stuff?
I mean, my kind of deal is I always, right up kind of what you're saying, is I focus on the kids. I focus on the process. I guess my kind of philosophy and my life philosophy is do everything to the best of your ability, the hardest you can, in a way or in a manner that regardless of the outcome, you won't have any regrets. So every day when you wake up and you're going to work or whatever it is, maximize my day so that when I go to bed at night, I don't have to think man, I wish I would have spent more time here. Or you're not going to be perfect, right? But that's kind of, again, when you talk about the kids and you focus on the kids, and that can mean something different for every kid. I'm not saying that you're going to be a state champ, but what I am saying that is if you give it all, your heart knows, right? You know whether you gave it all or not, right? If you give it all, at the end of the day, when this whole thing's all said and done, you won't have any regrets because you'll know you've given it all, and you got what you got. And the truth is, you're going to get a lot more than what you probably thought if you really go all in. So I don't know. That's kind of how I treat a lot of my guys. That's me as a coach, how I like to kind of operate. To put it all in there, whether it's your passion, your heart, your work, put it all into it so that you don't have any regrets. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's what came to mind.
Again, this is still surreal to me. Like I said, big inspiration to me. Brent Metcalf, been following you since your first year at Iowa, followed your whole career there, international career, and now coaching career. Really didn't think too much about Iowa State before, but you know what? Because you're coaching there, I do root for you guys a little bit.
Thank you.
I just really appreciate you and really am really thankful that you gave me this opportunity. It means a lot.
All right. Will do. It was my pleasure.